I'm Athena Kingston, 35 years old. Imagine being seated at the children's table at Thanksgiving dinner, not when you're 15, not when you're 25, but at 35 years old, while your younger sister takes the seat of honor next to your mother. That's exactly what happened to me last November, in front of 22 family members and friends. But what my mother didn't know was that 3 months earlier, I'd submitted a DNA test that would expose why she'd really favored my sister Jessica for 32 years. The email that arrived the morning after Thanksgiving didn't just explain the favoritism, it revealed a betrayal that would shatter our entire family's foundation. Before I share how one forwarded email changed everything, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely connect with stories about family secrets and finding your worth. I'd love to know where you're watching from and what time it is there. Let me take you back to that Thanksgiving day when my mother's cruelty finally made sense. Growing up in the Kingston household meant learning early that love came with conditions, and I never seemed to meet them. For 35 years, I watched my mother Margaret light up whenever Jessica entered a room while barely acknowledging my presence. The disparity wasn't subtle. When we were kids, Jessica's dance recitals filled our refrigerator with starred programs and photos, while my academic achievement certificates got stuffed in drawers. Dancing takes real talent, Mom would say. Anyone can get good grades if they just study hard enough. The financial favoritism cut deeper. While Mom and Dad paid Jessica's entire law school tuition at Northwestern, nearly $300,000, I took out student loans for my teaching degree at the state university. Mom justified it simply. Jessica's going places. Teachers will always struggle financially anyway, so debt won't change your lifestyle. Even graduation brought different treatments. Jessica received a new Mercedes and a down payment for her downtown penthouse. I got a greeting card with a $50 check and the words, "Congratulations on your teaching degree. At least it's steady work." Every family gathering reinforced the hierarchy. Mom would introduce Jessica as, "My daughter the lawyer," with pride radiating from her voice. I was simply, "Athena, she teaches high school." No mention of my National Teacher of the Year nomination or the literacy program I'd founded that helped over 500 struggling students. In Mom's eyes, Jessica was the sun, and I was barely a distant star. The strangest part? Jessica wasn't even exceptionally close to Mom. Their relationship seemed almost performative, like Mom was desperately trying to prove something. But prove what? And to whom? These questions haunted me, though I never imagined the answer would rewrite everything I thought I knew about our family. 2 days before Thanksgiving, I stood in my kitchen at 5 a.m., determined to perfect Grandma Rose's famous pumpkin pie. This year would be different. This year I'd contribute something so special that even Mom would have to acknowledge me. The secret was in the homemade cinnamon whipped cream, a recipe Grandma had taught only me before she passed. Jessica never had the patience for baking. As I folded spices into the filling, my phone buzzed with a reminder. 23andMe results may be available soon. 3 months earlier, during a particularly lonely evening, I'd impulsively ordered the Ancestry kit. Not looking for family secrets, just hoping to feel connected to something, maybe find some distant cousins who'd appreciate me more than my immediate family did. The kit had been a birthday gift to myself, ordered after Mom forgot the date entirely while posting 3 separate Facebook tributes to Jessica's law firm promotion that same week. "This is your year, Athena," I whispered to myself, carefully crimping the pie crust. I'd also prepared homemade cranberry sauce with orange zest and my signature green bean casserole with crispy shallots. Each dish represented hours of love, effort that I hoped would translate into just one genuine compliment from Mom. I'd even bought a new dress, professional but warm, in the deep burgundy Mom always said looked nice on Jessica. Maybe if I looked the part of the successful daughter, she'd treat me like one. My husband Mark, who'd stopped attending these gatherings years ago, watched me pack everything carefully. "You know she won't change," he said gently. "Maybe," I replied, "but I have to keep trying. She's still my mother." Little did I know that by the next morning, trying would no longer be an option. By 2 p.m. on Thanksgiving, Mom's house buzzed with arrivals. I'd come early to help set up, arranging my contributions on the kitchen counter while Mom fussed over Jessica's store-bought wine selection. "Look at this Bordeaux Jessica brought," Mom announced to Aunt Helen, who'd just arrived. "She has such sophisticated taste. It's $200 a bottle." The guests trickled in steadily. Uncle Tom and his family, Mom's book club friends, Dad's former business associates, and several neighbors Mom had invited to fill out the table properly. 22 people total, enough to make the dining room feel grand and important. Each arrival meant another opportunity for Mom to showcase Jessica's accomplishments. Then Jessica swept in at 2:30, fashionably late as always, with her boyfriend Bradley, a corporate lawyer from her firm. Mom practically glowed. "Everyone, Jessica's here. Did I mention she just made senior associate? Youngest in the firm's history." The room erupted in congratulations while I quietly refilled the appetizer plates. "Oh, Athena's here too," Cousin Linda noticed me. "How's teaching going?" Before I could answer, Mom interjected, same old with Athena. But Jessica, tell everyone about that $3 million settlement you just won." I watched Jessica bask in the attention, her practiced smile never wavering. She caught my eye once, something unreadable flickering across her face. Guilt? Pity? Before I could interpret it, Mom was ushering everyone toward the dining room. "Time to find your seats, everyone," Mom announced, holding a stack of place cards. "I've arranged everything perfectly this year." She beamed at the two tables, one long, elegant table with the good china, and a smaller side table I assumed was for overflow. My stomach tightened. Surely at 35 I'd finally earned a seat at the main table. I circled the main table slowly, reading each elegant place card Mom had crafted in her perfect calligraphy. Robert Kingston at the head, Margaret Kingston to his right, Jessica to her left. Bradley, Aunt Helen, Uncle Tom, the book club ladies, Dad's golf buddies. Every seat accounted for. No Athena Kingston. "Mom," I called out, keeping my voice steady. "I don't see my card." She was adjusting the centerpiece, not even looking up. "Check the other table, dear." The smaller table sat in the corner, dressed with paper plates and mismatched chairs. Place cards in different handwriting, clearly an afterthought, marked spots for my teenage cousins, the neighbors' kids, and there it was. Athena, scrawled on a folded index card between 8-year-old Tommy and 12-year-old Emma. "There must be a mistake," I said louder, drawing attention from the relatives still milling about. "This is the children's table." Mom finally looked at me, her expression eerily calm. "No mistake. We needed room for the important guests at the main table. You understand." "Important guests?" My voice cracked slightly. "I'm your daughter. And Jessica's my successful daughter who needs to network with these people for her career. Really, Athena, don't make a scene. It's just a seat." Uncle Tom shifted uncomfortably. "Margaret, surely we can squeeze." "The arrangements are final." Mom cut him off, then laughed. Actually laughed. "Besides, Athena's a teacher. She should be comfortable with children." I stood frozen, holding my paper place card while 22 pairs of eyes watched. Jessica studied her wine glass. Dad cleared his throat but said nothing. The neighbor's 10-year-old son tugged my dress. "Miss Kingston, are you sitting with us? Cool. You can help me cut my turkey." The humiliation was complete. The room fell silent as I stood between the two tables, my face burning under the weight of every stare. Mom smoothed her dress and delivered the final blow with surgical precision. "The golden child needs the head chair. You should know your place by now, Athena." She said it sweetly, like explaining something obvious to a slow student. "Jessica's presence here actually matters to these people." Aunt Helen gasped audibly. "Margaret, that's cruel." "It's practical," Mom interrupted, her voice taking on an edge. "Jessica needs to sit with Bradley's potential clients. What would Athena discuss with them? Lesson plans? Parent-teacher conferences?" She laughed again, that tinkling sound that made my skin crawl. "We all have our roles. Jessica's the star. Well, Athena tries hard." Jessica finally spoke, but not in my defense. Mom, you're embarrassing her. The words carried no real concern, just mild annoyance at the disruption. I'm simply being honest, Mom replied, guiding Jessica to her seat. Someone needs to. Athena's 35 years old, still dressing like she shops at Target, still driving that ancient Honda. At some point, we have to accept what she is and what she isn't. My hands trembled as I set down the place card. The room watched, waiting for my response. A fight, tears, something dramatic. But I wouldn't give her that satisfaction. I walked to the children's table with my head high, even as my cousin Tommy whispered too loudly, "Why is Aunt Athena sitting with us?" "Because your Grandma Margaret thinks I belong here," I said clearly, my voice carrying across both tables. "And maybe it's time I stopped trying to convince her otherwise." Mom's smile flickered for just a second before she turned to her important guests, dismissing me entirely. The silence that followed felt suffocating. Dad stared at his plate, methodically adjusting his silverware rather than meeting my eyes. 37 years of marriage had taught him to choose his battles, and apparently, his daughter's dignity wasn't worth the war. His jaw tightened, a tell I recognized from childhood. He disagreed but wouldn't dare voice it. "Robert," Uncle Tom tried, "don't you think—" Dad cleared his throat, cutting him off. "Margaret's the hostess. Her seating arrangement." The words came out flat, automatic. Another surrender in a lifetime of them. Jessica let out a small, nervous giggle, that same sound she'd made as a child when caught doing something wrong but knowing she wouldn't be punished. "Well, at least you'll have fun with the kids, Athena. You're so good with them." The condescension dripped like honey, sweet and suffocating. Bradley whispered something in Jessica's ear, and she swatted him playfully. They were already moving on, the uncomfortable moment just a minor speed bump in their perfect evening. Around the main table, conversations resumed in hushed tones. I caught fragments. "Always been like this, and poor Athena and Margaret goes too far," but no one stood up. No one offered to switch seats. Aunt Helen held my gaze for a moment, her eyes full of sympathy and something else. Shame, maybe, for not speaking up more forcefully. She mouthed, "I'm sorry," before Mom's sharp voice drew her attention away. "Helen, you must try Jessica's wine selection. She has such refined taste." The neighbor's kids at my table watched everything with wide eyes, old enough to understand something was wrong, but not quite what. Emma, the 12-year-old, touched my hand gently. "You can share my coloring book if you want, Miss Kingston." Even the children knew I needed comforting. I settled into the plastic folding chair between Tommy and Emma, my knees bumping the card table's wobbly legs. The paper plate in front of me had cartoon turkeys printed on it. Tommy immediately started showing me his collection of Pokemon cards, while Emma quietly set a juice box beside my plate. "Why are you sitting with us, Aunt Athena?" Tommy's question rang out clear and innocent. "You're a grown-up. Grown-ups sit at the big table." Before I could answer, Mom's voice carried over. "Athena's keeping you kids company. Isn't that nice of her?" "But she's not a babysitter," Emma protested with 12-year-old logic. "She's family. Some family members are more suited to the adult table," Mom replied smoothly, then pivoted to Jessica. "Speaking of which, Jessica, tell everyone about your latest case." As Jessica launched into her story, punctuated by Mom's theatrical gasps of pride, the kids' table received our food, brought over by the catering staff Mom had hired, served on paper plates while the main table enjoyed the good china. My grandmother's pumpkin pie, which I'd spent hours perfecting, sat on the main table like a trophy I'd never claim. "Your mom's mean," Emma whispered, wise beyond her years. "My mom says Grandma Margaret plays favorites, but this is really bad." Even a 12-year-old could see it. The humiliation sharpened into something else, clarity. This wasn't about my accomplishments or lack thereof. This was deliberate, calculated cruelty. But why? What had I done to deserve 35 years of this? From the main table, Jessica's laughter rang out. "Mom, stop! You're embarrassing me," she protested as Mom regaled the table with yet another story of Jessica's brilliance. The contrast was deliberate, the message clear. One daughter at the throne, the other in exile. Halfway through dinner, I attempted to join the adult conversation when Uncle Tom asked about the literacy program I'd founded. Athena's program won a state award, he said loudly, trying to throw me a lifeline. Tell everyone about it. I stood slightly, hoping my voice would carry. We've helped over 500 students improve their reading levels. The state just approved funding for… Athena still just teaches, Mom cut in, her voice sharp and dismissive. Nothing new there, but Jessica. Tell Tom about that $3 million settlement. Now that's an achievement worth discussing. The main table turned to Jessica, like sunflowers to the sun. I sat back down, my face burning. Emma squeezed my hand under the table. I think teaching is important, she whispered fiercely. 10 minutes later, when Dad's golf buddy asked about my husband Mark's absence, I tried again. Mark's visiting his mother in Phoenix. She's recovering from… Mark never did like our gatherings, Mom interrupted with a false laugh. Can't blame him. Not everyone can handle successful people. It's intimidating for some. She patted Jessica's hand. Thank goodness Bradley fits right in. Harvard Law, isn't that right? Yale, actually, Bradley corrected with a smug smile. Even better, Mom practically sang. Jessica only dates the best. That was it, the final straw. I stood quietly, placing my paper napkin beside the untouched food. Thank you for dinner. I need to leave. Already? Mom didn't even turn around. Well, if you must. Jessica, darling, tell everyone about your promotion timeline. Not a single person at the main table said goodbye. Only Emma waved, her young face sad and confused. As I gathered my coat, I heard Mom say, Always so dramatic, that one. Jessica would never storm off like that. I walked through the dining room one last time, my coat over my arm, my grandmother's pie recipes in my head. Wasted effort on people who'd never taste them from the children's table. The main table had fallen quiet, all eyes following my movement, but no voices raised in protest or farewell. Thank you for the meal, I said clearly, addressing the room but looking at no one. I need to go where I'm actually valued. Mom laughed, that crystalline sound that could cut glass. Oh, Athena, always making everything about you. This is why Jessica is the golden child. Yes, Mom, I heard you the first time. I pulled on my coat with steady hands, though my heart hammered. Enjoy your evening with your important guests. Dad half stood, finally finding his voice. Athena, don't leave like this. Like what, Dad? With dignity? I met his eyes. You chose your side when you stayed silent. Enjoy your meal. As I passed the kitchen, I saw my homemade dishes sitting untouched on the counter, forgotten in favor of Jessica's store-bought contributions displayed prominently on the main table. The metaphor was almost too perfect. Uncle Tom called out, Drive safe, Athena. The only kindness offered, and even that felt hollow. I stepped into the cold November air, my phone already buzzing with a text from Mark. How bad was it? Worse than ever, I typed back, but also the last time. Behind me, through the window, I could see the warm glow of the dining room, hear the muffled laughter resuming. Mom's voice carried out, So sensitive! Jessica, you got all the resilience in this family. Tomorrow, I thought as I started my ancient Honda, tomorrow would change everything. I just didn't know how right I was. The house felt empty when I got home, Mark still in Phoenix with his mother. I poured myself a glass of wine, not a $200 bottle like Jessica's, just something honest and comforting, and sat in the darkness of my living room. 35 years of memories played like a cruel slideshow in my mind. My 5th birthday, when Mom forgot to pick me up from school because she was at Jessica's dance recital. My high school graduation, where Mom left early to drive Jessica to a friend's party. My wedding, where Mom spent the entire reception telling guests about Jessica getting into law school. Every milestone of mine overshadowed, diminished, forgotten. The pattern was so consistent it felt deliberate, not just favoritism, but something more targeted. Mom didn't just love Jessica more, she seemed to actively resent my existence. But why? I'd been the easy child, the good grades, the one who never caused trouble. Jessica had been expelled from private school for cheating, had crashed 2 cars before turning 20, had cycled through relationships like seasonal wardrobes, yet she remained the golden one. My phone sat silent. No text from family checking if I'd made it home safely. No calls from Dad apologizing for his silence. No message from Jessica even pretending to care. The family group chat continued without me. Photos from dinner appearing, Jessica radiant at the main table, Mom beaming beside her, everyone toasting with the expensive wine. The children's table wasn't even in frame. "That's it," I said to the empty room. "I'm done trying to earn love that was never mine to win." I thought about the DNA test, wondering idly when the results would arrive, looking for distant relatives who might actually want to claim me. Tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow, I'd stop chasing ghosts. I had no idea tomorrow would reveal why those ghosts had been running from me all along. Black Friday morning came gray and quiet. I woke at 6 a.m., not for shopping, but from habit. Teachers' schedules die hard. My phone showed 0 messages from family. The group chat had gone silent after midnight. The last message, a photo of Jessica and Mom doing dishes together, captioned, "My helpful daughter." I made coffee and opened my laptop to check work emails, trying to focus on normal life. That's when I saw it. An email from 23andMe sent at 2:47 a.m. Subject line, "Your DNA results are ready." My cursor hovered over it. 3 months ago, I'd spit in that tube hoping to find something. Heritage, distant cousins, anything to feel connected to. Now it felt like opening a door to a room I'd forgotten existed. "View your results now," the cheerful button invited. I clicked through to the ancestry composition first. 47% Irish, 31% German, 22% Scottish. Interesting, but not surprising. Mom always talked about our Irish roots. Then I navigated to DNA relatives, expecting maybe some fourth cousins twice removed. The top match stopped me cold. Jessica Kingston, half-sister, 25% shared DNA. Half-sister? That had to be wrong. I refreshed the page. The result remained. My hands shook as I scrolled down. There, listed as Jessica's match but not mine. Michael Smith, half-sibling, 50% shared DNA. Michael Smith. Why did that name sound... Wait. Smith. David Smith. Dad's former business partner who'd abruptly ended their partnership 30 years ago, right around when Jessica was born. The man whose family had mysteriously cut all contact with ours. The coffee mug slipped from my hand, shattering on the floor. Brown liquid spread across the tiles like the truth spreading through my mind. Jessica wasn't Dad's daughter. She was David Smith's. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. Half-sister, 25% shared DNA. The science was clear, clinical, undeniable. Jessica and I shared a mother, but not a father. My whole body felt numb as I clicked through to Michael Smith's profile. Limited information, but enough. Age 33. Location, Seattle. One photo showing a man who looked disturbingly like Jessica. Same sharp jawline, same green eyes that neither Mom nor Dad had. The timeline aligned perfectly. David Smith had been Dad's business partner for 5 years before suddenly withdrawing from their joint company 32 years ago, taking a significant loss to get out quickly. Mom had been depressed that year, spending a month at her sister's house to recover from exhaustion. Jessica was born 8 months after David left. Everything clicked into place with sickening clarity. Mom's desperate favoritism wasn't love, it was guilt. Every gift, every preference, every public praise was hush money to her own conscience. She looked at Jessica and saw her affair, her betrayal. She looked at me and saw the daughter of the man she'd wronged. But Dad, did he know? Had he spent 32 years raising another man's child? Or was he another victim of mom's deception? I downloaded the full report, all the scientific evidence laid out in graphs and percentages. Then I opened a new email and addressed it to Dad's personal account, the one Mom never checked. My fingers hesitated over the keyboard. Once I sent this, there was no going back. The family would shatter. Good, I thought, remembering the children's table, the decades of humiliation. It was already broken. This would just make everyone else see the cracks. I attached the report and typed a simple subject line. Why Mom really favors her. If you've ever felt like an outsider in your own family, leave a comment below. Family secrets can explain so much of what we never understood growing up. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the dramatic confrontation that's about to unfold. This story is about to take a turn that even I didn't see coming when I hit send on that email. Before hitting send, I needed to be absolutely certain. I pulled up old photo albums from Mom's Facebook, studying Jessica's features with new eyes. There it was. The cleft chin neither Mom nor Dad had. The green eyes that had always seemed out of place in our brown-eyed family. The height she'd inherited from someone who wasn't in our family photos. I searched David Smith, Seattle, and found his company website. CEO of a tech firm, married with 2 kids, Michael, 33, and Jennifer, 29. The corporate photo showed an older version of Jessica's face in masculine form. The resemblance was undeniable. Then I remembered other things, how Mom had insisted on naming Jessica, overruling Dad's choice of Sarah, how she'd always been paranoid about Jessica dating anyone from Dad's business circles, how she'd gone pale when Jessica mentioned doing a DNA test for fun last year, quickly talking her out of it with stories about privacy concerns. The favoritism hadn't been random cruelty, it was a 3-decade cover-up. Every time Mom elevated Jessica, she was justifying her affair. Every time she diminished me, she was punishing the reminder of her betrayal. I wasn't just the unfavored daughter, I was the legitimate heir she resented. Mom's cruelty finally made sense. She couldn't love me without confronting what she'd done to my father. She couldn't look at me without seeing the marriage she'd violated. So she'd spent 35 years trying to convince herself and everyone else that Jessica was worth it, that the affair had produced something superior. But DNA doesn't lie, even when mothers do. I went back to the email, added one line below the subject. I know everything. The question is, does Jessica? Then I hit send. The email showed delivered at 7:23 a.m. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. There was no taking it back now. Dad usually checked his personal email during his morning coffee, a habit from his CFO days. It would be minutes, maybe less, before my father's world imploded. I considered warning Jessica, but dismissed the thought immediately. She'd had 32 years of advantages built on a lie. She could handle a few minutes of ignorance before her pedestal crumbled. Besides, she'd chosen her side yesterday when she giggled at Mom's cruelty. My phone sat silent on the table, a black mirror reflecting my decision. Should I have confronted Mom privately first? Given her a chance to come clean? No. Privacy was what had enabled this deception for 3 decades. It was time for truth in the bright, harsh light of day. I pulled up the family group chat and typed, "Everyone might want to stay available today. There's going to be a family meeting." Then I deleted it without sending. Let Dad decide how to handle this. He'd earned that right after 32 years of unknowing humiliation. At 7:31 a.m., my phone rang. Dad's contact photo, him smiling at last year's Christmas, arm around Mom while Jessica posed between them, felt like evidence at a crime scene now. Athena. His voice was barely a whisper, raw and broken. Is this real? Triple-checked, Dad. It's real. Silence stretched between us, filled with 3 decades of deception crashing down. How long have you known? He asked. 15 minutes. You're the first person I've told. Jessica doesn't know? Not yet. Another pause. Then stronger. She's about to. So is your mother. So is everyone. I'm coming over, Dad said, his voice gaining strength with each word. Don't go anywhere. Dad, you don't have to. Yes, I do. For once in 32 years, I'm going to handle this right. Your mother. He paused, and I heard him take a shaky breath. I suspected something once, years ago. The timeline when Jessica was born, David leaving so suddenly. But Margaret convinced me I was paranoid, that I was trying to find problems where none existed. Dad, I'm so sorry. You're sorry? He laughed bitterly. My daughter gets humiliated at Thanksgiving, seated at a children's table at 35, and she's apologizing to me? No, Athena. I'm sorry. I should have protected you. I should have stood up yesterday, should have seen what was happening all these years. 20 minutes later, Dad arrived at my house looking older than his 64 years, but somehow more solid, more present than I'd seen him in decades. He hugged me, really hugged me, for the first time in years. I always wondered why she couldn't love you properly, he said into my hair. You were the easier child, the kinder one. It never made sense. Now it does. She couldn't love you because you were mine, really mine. We sat at my kitchen table, the DNA report between us like a roadmap to the truth. What are you going to do? I asked. What I should have done yesterday when she humiliated you. Stand up for my real daughter. He pulled out his phone. I'm calling Tom and Helen, then Margaret. We're having a family meeting today. What about Jessica? Dad's face softened slightly. She's a victim too. But she's also had 32 years of advantages built on your suffering. It's time for that to end. We spent the next hour strategizing, like the corporate executive he'd been and the teacher I was. Methodical, thorough, prepared. Dad pulled up financial records on his laptop, showing me things I'd never known. Your mother controls the checking account, but the real assets, the investment portfolio, the properties, the retirement funds, they're all in my name or joint, he explained. She insisted Jessica get her law degree paid for from our money. Now I know why she was so adamant. You're not going to cut Jessica off, are you? Despite everything, that felt too cruel. No, but she's going to learn what it feels like to be treated equally, not specially. He showed me a trust fund statement. I set aside money for both of you years ago. Your mother convinced me to give Jessica early access for her condo down payment. You never got yours. I didn't even know it existed. Because Margaret said you'd be insulted, that you were too proud to take family money. His jaw tightened. Another lie to keep you down and Jessica up. He made calls with the speaker on. Uncle Tom's reaction was immediate. I knew something was off yesterday. Helen and I were just discussing it. Aunt Helen was more direct. That explains everything. Oh, Robert, I'm so sorry. And poor Athena. Save your sympathy, Dad said firmly. We need witnesses, not pity. 3 o'clock, our house. Everyone who was at Thanksgiving dinner gets to see the truth. The last call was to Mom. Family meeting, 3 o'clock, non-negotiable. Robert, what's this about? Her voice was irritated through the speaker. The inheritance, he said smoothly. Bring Jessica. Oh, her tone brightened. Of course, we'll be there. Dad and I arrived at the house at 2:30 to prepare. The dining room where I'd been humiliated yesterday would become the courtroom for truth today. Dad connected his laptop to the large TV Mom had insisted on buying to display Jessica's graduation photos properly. Should we warn Jessica privately? I asked one more time, my teacher's instinct to protect the innocent warring with years of resentment. Did anyone warn you yesterday before you were humiliated? Dad responded. Jessica's an adult, a lawyer. She can handle the truth the same way you've handled lies for 35 years. We arranged chairs facing the TV, like a presentation setup. Dad printed copies of the DNA report, placing them face down on the coffee table. The house felt charged, like the moment before lightning strikes. Uncle Tom arrived first with Aunt Helen. We're here for you both, Helen said, squeezing my hand. Yesterday was unconscionable. More family trickled in. The cousins who'd witnessed yesterday's humiliation, Dad's golf buddies who'd stayed silent, even the neighbors Mom had invited to fill seats. Dad had called them all. "Why are the Johnsons here?" I whispered. "Your mother wanted witnesses to your humiliation. She gets witnesses to hers." At 2:55, we heard Mom's car in the driveway. Her laughter carried through the door. She was telling Jessica something about finally making things official and putting everything in its proper place. They walked in together, Mom in her best dress, Jessica in designer casual wear. They surveyed the assembled crowd with matching smiles until they noticed the formal setup. "What's all this?" Mom asked, her smile faltering slightly. "Sit down, Margaret," Dad said quietly. "Both of you, we have something to discuss." The room filled with tense energy as everyone found seats. Mom took her usual position at the center, pulling Jessica down beside her. They still moved like royalty granting an audience, unaware their kingdom was built on sand. "Is this about the will?" Mom asked brightly, pulling out her phone to take notes. "I've been thinking Jessica should be executor, given her legal expertise." "It's about family truth," Dad said, standing at the front like the executive he'd once been. "About decisions made 32 years ago that have affected everyone in this room." Jessica looked confused but intrigued. Several relatives shifted uncomfortably. They sensed something momentous coming. The neighbor's mom had invited to witness my humiliation yesterday sat forward, probably expecting drama they could gossip about later. They were about to get more than they'd bargained for. "Robert, what's this about?" Mom's voice carried a warning edge. "If this is about yesterday, it's about every day for the past 32 years, Dad interrupted. About why one daughter was worth everything and the other worth nothing." I watched Mom's face shift from annoyance to concern. Her fingers tightened on Jessica's arm. "Before we begin," Dad continued, "I want everyone to remember what happened yesterday. How Athena, at 35, was seated at the children's table while Jessica took the place of honor. How Margaret said, and I quote, 'The golden child needs the head chair.'" Murmurs rippled through the room. Several people who'd been silent yesterday now looked ashamed. "That ends today," Dad said. "Because today, everyone learns why Margaret really favored one daughter over the other. Today, 32 years of deception ends." Mom stood abruptly. "We're leaving." "No," Dad said firmly. "You're not. Not this time. Sit down, Margaret, or I'll share this with a wider audience than just family." Dad clicked the remote and the TV screen lit up with a simple title: DNA Results, 23andMe. Mom's face went white. Jessica looked between her parents, confused. 3 months ago, Athena took a DNA test to explore her ancestry, Dad began, his voice steady and prosecutorial. "The results arrived this morning. They explain everything: the favoritism, the cruelty, the reason one daughter was worth investing in while the other was repeatedly humiliated." "This is ridiculous," Mom interjected, but her voice shook. "DNA tests can be wrong." "They're 99.9% accurate," Jessica corrected automatically, her lawyer instincts kicking in. Then she froze, realizing what she'd just confirmed. "Thank you, Jessica," Dad said. "Your legal expertise will be helpful here." He clicked to the next slide showing the relative matches. "Athena, would you read what this says?" I stood, my voice clear despite my racing heart. "Jessica Kingston, half-sister, 25% shared DNA." Gasps echoed through the room. Jessica's face drained of color. That's impossible." "There's more," Dad continued, clicking again. "Michael Smith, matched as Jessica's half-sibling, sharing 50% DNA. Michael Smith is the son of David Smith, my former business partner who abruptly left our company 32 years ago." The room erupted. Uncle Tom cursed under his breath. Aunt Helen covered her mouth. The neighbors looked scandalized and thrilled simultaneously. But I watched only two faces: Mom, who seemed to shrink into herself, and Jessica, whose world was crumbling in real time. You mean? Jessica's voice was barely a whisper. I'm not. Dad isn't. Robert isn't your biological father, I said gently. David Smith is. Mom finally spoke, her voice desperate. There's something everyone needs to know. Yes, Dad agreed. There is. The truth. Dad clicked through the full DNA report methodically, each slide another nail in the coffin of Mom's deception. Chromosomes, percentages, genetic markers, all confirming what was now undeniable. Jessica wasn't his biological daughter. This is why David left the company, Dad said, his voice carrying across the silent room. Margaret was pregnant. He knew. He ran rather than face the consequences. Stop, Mom pleaded, but Dad continued. This is why you've tortured Athena for 35 years, he said, turning to face Mom directly. Every time you looked at her, you saw the husband you betrayed. Every time you elevated Jessica, you were justifying your affair. Jessica stood abruptly, her designer bag falling to the floor. No, no. This is some sick joke. Athena fabricated this because she's jealous. Check for yourself, I said quietly, pulling out my phone. Log into 23andMe. You told me last year you'd created an account, but never submitted the test. Submit it now. Prove me wrong. Jessica's hands shook as she grabbed her phone. Mom tried to stop her. Jessica, sweetheart, don't. Don't what, Mom? Jessica's voice cracked. Don't find out my whole life is a lie? Don't discover why you really gave me everything while treating Athena like garbage? I protected you, Mom burst out. Both of you. Jessica from abandonment, Athena from the truth. You protected yourself, Aunt Helen interjected, standing. We all watched you destroy one daughter to elevate the other. Now we know why. The neighbors were recording on their phones. Uncle Tom looked disgusted. Dad's golf buddies shifted uncomfortably. Everyone who'd witnessed yesterday's humiliation was now witnessing its explanation. Jessica stared at Mom with dawning horror. The golden child. You called me the golden child because I was your guilt made flesh. Mom rallied with desperate energy, her voice rising to that commanding tone she'd used to control us for decades. This is preposterous. One questionable test and you're all ready to destroy our family? You destroyed it 32 years ago, Dad said coldly. These tests have false positives all the time, Mom insisted, grasping for any foothold. Athena's always been jealous of Jessica's success. She probably doctored these results. How? Jessica interrupted, her lawyer mind working despite her shock. How would she doctor a test from a certified lab? How would she create a match with someone she's never met? She pulled up her phone, showing her own 23andMe account. I can see Michael Smith in my matches too, Mom. 50% match, half sibling. Mom's mask finally cracked completely. You don't understand. Robert was never home, always working. David was there. He listened. So you slept with my business partner? Dad's composure finally broke. And then let me raise his child while treating my actual daughter like a second-class citizen? I never meant— You seated her at the children's table, Uncle Tom exploded. At 35 years old, while parading Jessica around like a prize. We all watched and said nothing, but now we know you weren't playing favorites. You were covering up a crime. It wasn't a crime, Mom shrieked. It was a mistake, one mistake. That you paid for with Athena's childhood, Aunt Helen said. Every birthday Jessica got a party while Athena got forgotten. Every achievement Jessica made got celebrated while Athena's got dismissed. You sacrificed one daughter's entire life to hide your guilt about the other. Jessica sank into a chair, her face in her hands. Everything, my whole life. The advantages, the opportunities, it was all hush money. Shh. Jessica looked up at me with tears streaming down her face, mascara running in black rivers. For the first time in our lives, she looked vulnerable, young, lost. You knew? How long have you known? Since this morning, I said gently. You're finding out the same day I did. She turned to Mom with a mix of rage and devastation. My whole life, every gift, every opportunity, every moment you chose me over Athena, it wasn't because you loved me more, it was because you couldn't look at what you'd done. I did love you. You loved what I represented. Jessica stood, her voice rising. I was your get out of guilt free card. Every time you gave me something Athena deserved, you were telling yourself the affair was worth it. She grabbed her purse, then stopped, looking at Dad, the man who'd raised her. Did you know? No, Dad said softly. I suspected once, but your mother convinced me I was wrong. I loved you as my daughter, Jessica. That part was never a lie. But it was all a lie. Jessica's composure shattered completely. The college fund that Athena didn't get, that was guilt money. The car, the condo, the connections, all of it was Mom trying to justify destroying her marriage and Athena's life. She whirled on Mom. And you let me participate. You made me complicit. Every time I accepted your favoritism, I was helping you hurt Athena. You turned me into your accomplice. Mom reached for her, but Jessica recoiled. Don't touch me. Don't you dare. You used me as a weapon against your own daughter, your real daughter, for 32 years. The room was silent except for Jessica's ragged breathing and Mom's quiet sobs. The truth can shatter families, but sometimes that's what it takes to rebuild them properly. Do you think Jessica deserved to know the truth? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonates with you, please share it with anyone who needs to hear about setting boundaries with toxic family members. Like and subscribe to support more real stories about family dynamics and finding justice. Mom collapsed into her chair, suddenly looking every one of her 62 years. The room waited in tense silence until she finally spoke, her voice hollow and defeated. David and it happened during that conference in Chicago. Robert had canceled last minute, another emergency at work. David was there, and we'd had too much wine, and... She trailed off, then forced herself to continue. When I found out I was pregnant, I knew immediately. The timing was wrong for it to be Robert's. So you told David? Dad asked, his voice deadly quiet. He figured it out himself. The panic in my eyes gave it away. He offered to leave his wife, but I couldn't destroy two families. So he left the company instead, took his family to Seattle. We agreed never to contact each other again. And you decided to destroy Athena instead, Aunt Helen said coldly. Mom's tears fell freely now. I didn't mean to, but every time I looked at Athena, I saw Robert's face, his loyalty, everything I'd betrayed. And Jessica was my reminder of my worst moment, but also proof that something good could come from something terrible. So you gave her everything, I said, finding my voice, while giving me nothing. I thought if Jessica succeeded enough, if she was special enough, it would justify what I'd done, Mom admitted. Every achievement of hers felt like absolution. Every time I put her first, I was proving the affair had been worth something. And every time you put Athena last, Dad said, you were punishing her for being mine. Mom nodded miserably. I'm so sorry, Athena. I'm so sorry. But sorry didn't give me back 35 years. Dad stood at the head of the table, commanding the room with the authority I remembered from his CEO days. The broken man from this morning was gone, replaced by someone who'd finally found his backbone after 32 years. Here's what's going to happen, he announced. Margaret, I'm filing for divorce Monday morning. You'll move out of the house by the end of the week. Robert, please. You've had 32 years of please. It's over. He pulled out a folder of documents. The house is in my name. The investment accounts are mine. The retirement funds, mine. You'll get what the law requires, nothing more, thing. He turned to me. Athena, the education fund that should have been yours, the one that paid for Jessica's law school, you'll receive an equivalent amount plus interest, about $300,000. Gasps echoed through the room. Mom started to protest, but Dad silenced her with a look. Jessica, he continued more gently, you're not losing anything. What you've received is yours. But going forward, everything will be split equally between you and Athena. No more favoritism. No more golden child. Jessica nodded numbly, still processing everything. As for the rest of you, Dad addressed the room, you all witnessed yesterday's cruelty and stayed silent. Today, you've witnessed the truth. I expect you'll all remember both when Margaret comes looking for sympathy and support. Uncle Tom stood. You have mine, Robert. And Athena, I'm sorry I didn't speak up yesterday. One by one, family members chose sides, most aligned with Dad. Mom's support system crumbled as quickly as her lies had. 32 years, Dad said finally, looking at Mom. You stole 32 years from all of us. That ends today. The room erupted as the full weight of the revelation settled. Mrs. Johnson, our neighbor who'd watched me grow up, stood with tears in her eyes. Margaret, how could you? I watched you torture that child for years. We all thought you were just playing favorites, but this is monstrous. We always wondered, Dad's golf buddy Richard admitted. Jessica looks nothing like you, Robert, but we figured it wasn't our place to say anything. You all knew? Mom looked around wildly. You suspected and said nothing? We suspected an affair, Aunt Helen clarified. We didn't know you'd spent 3 decades punishing Athena for it. If we had... She shook her head. Yesterday was the final straw. Watching you put her at the children's table while knowing this? You're sick, Margaret. Jessica suddenly stood. I need to leave. I can't be here. Jessica, wait, I called out, surprising myself. She turned, mascara streaked and broken. How can you even look at me? She asked. I've been the weapon Mom used against you our entire lives. You didn't know, I said simply. We're both victims here, just in different ways. Uncle Tom spoke up. The real crime here is that Margaret made you two enemies when you should have been allies. She pitted sisters against each other to hide her own shame. The neighbors were whispering among themselves, already spreading the story. By tomorrow, everyone in our social circle would know. Mom's carefully crafted reputation was destroyed. I think we should go, Mr. Johnson said to his wife. This is a family matter now. As the non-family members filed out, each one looked at me with sympathy and Mom with disgust. The public vindication I'd never sought but desperately needed was complete. After the neighbors left, Jessica collapsed back into her chair, her carefully constructed world in ruins. The confident lawyer who'd laughed at my humiliation yesterday was gone, replaced by a lost 32-year-old, discovering her entire identity was built on deception. Am I even a real Kingston? She asked the room, her voice small. Do I have any right to the name? You're the daughter I raised, Dad said firmly. Biology doesn't change that. But you need to understand what your privileges cost your sister. Jessica looked at me, really looked at me, perhaps for the first time. Every opportunity I got, you should have had the same. The education, the connections, the support. Oh God, the Thanksgiving dinners where Mom would brag about me while you sat there silent. The children's table, I reminded her quietly. She flinched. I laughed. When Mom put you there, I laughed. Her voice broke. I thought it was funny. I thought you were being dramatic when you left. But you were the only real Kingston daughter at that table, and Mom knew it. Everything I achieved, she continued spiraling, was it even real? Or was it all just Mom throwing money and opportunities at her guilt? Did I earn any of it? You earned your law degree, I said, surprising us both with my fairness. Mom paid for it, yes. But you did the work. You passed the bar. Your victories in court, those were yours. Built on a foundation of lies and your stolen opportunities, Jessica countered bitterly. How can I practice law when my entire life has been about perpetuating an injustice? Mom reached for her again. Jessica, please. No! Jessica pulled away violently. You don't get to comfort me. You used me. You made me your accomplice in emotional abuse. I moved toward Jessica slowly, like approaching a wounded animal. She looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes, mascara completely destroyed, designer facade crumbled. For the first time in our lives, we were just two women dealing with the same betrayal from different angles. I don't blame you, I said, sitting beside her. I need you to know that. You were a baby. You had no choice in any of this. But I had choices later, Jessica protested. Every time Mom favored me, I could have said something. I could have refused the car, the condo, insisted you get the same. But I didn't. I enjoyed being the golden child. Because that's all you knew. Mom programmed you from birth to believe you deserved more. How could you question something that started before you could even form memories? Jessica grabbed my hand suddenly, squeezing tight. 35 years. She stole 35 years from us. We could have been real sisters. We could have been friends. We still can be, I offered. It won't erase the past, but maybe we can build something new, something honest. After everything? After I participated in your humiliation? You were manipulated too, just differently. Mom turned you into a weapon, but weapons don't choose how they're used. Aunt Helen watched us with tears in her eyes. This is what Margaret feared most. You two connecting without her control. She kept you apart with inequality because together you might have discovered the truth. Jessica turned to me fully. I want to know you, the real you, not the version Mom painted as lesser, but my actual sister. Is it too late? It's never too late for truth, I said, meaning it. Mom watched Jessica and me connect with growing panic, realizing her worst fear was materializing, her daughters united and both against her. She stood abruptly, desperate to regain control of the narrative. You don't understand the full story, she pleaded. Robert was never home. He worked 80-hour weeks, missed birthdays, anniversaries. David was there when I needed someone. So that justifies 32 years of psychological abuse? Aunt Helen asked coldly. I was protecting everyone. If the truth had come out then, it would have destroyed both families. David's marriage, our marriage, the business, everything would have collapsed. Instead, you just destroyed Athena, Dad said flatly. Mom turned to me, tears streaming. I didn't mean for it to go so far. At first, I just wanted to make sure Jessica felt loved despite everything. But then it became easier to push you away than face what I'd done. Every year it got worse and I couldn't stop. Couldn't? Or wouldn't? I asked. The children's table, Uncle Tom interjected. That was just yesterday, Margaret. You're still doing it. You humiliated Athena in front of everyone 48 hours ago. I was maintaining consistency. If I'd suddenly changed after 30 years, people would have questioned your convenience, Jessica interrupted, voice hard. You prioritized your cover story over Athena's dignity. Even yesterday, even knowing she's Dad's only biological child, you still chose your lie over her humanity. Mom crumpled, sinking to her knees in a theatrical display. Please, I'm sorry. I'll make it right. I'll tell everyone the truth. I'll apologize publicly. 35 years too late, I said quietly. Your apologies can't give me back my childhood, my self-worth, or the mother I should have had. Dad pulled out more documents, spreading them across the table with the precision of his former CFO days. Let's discuss the financial reality, since Margaret always cared so much about who deserved what. He showed us spreadsheets he'd prepared. Over 32 years, the disparity in what was spent on each daughter amounts to approximately $450,000. That includes education, cars, property down payments, and gifts. Jessica gasped. That much? Your law school alone was $280,000. The Mercedes, $65,000. The condo down payment, $75,000. Meanwhile, Athena got a used Honda Civic for graduation and paid her own way through state school. I'll pay it back, Jessica said immediately. Athena should have that money. No, I said. That's not necessary. Yes, it is, Jessica insisted. I benefited from Mom's guilt for 32 years. You suffered for it. This is the least I can do. Dad nodded approvingly. There's also the matter of the trust funds. Margaret convinced me to give Jessica early access to hers. Athena, you never even knew yours existed. It's currently worth $500,000 with interest. Mom's face went white. That's marital property. That I set up before Jessica was even born, Dad cut her off. For my daughters. My actual daughter will finally receive what was always hers. Additionally, he continued, the house will be sold. Athena, you'll receive the first option to buy if you want it. Margaret will receive her legal share from the sale. Nothing more. What am I supposed to live on? Mom wailed. The same thing Athena lived on while you lavished everything on Jessica, Aunt Helen said. Your own efforts. Maybe get a job. Teachers work hard for their money. Ask Athena. Jessica pulled out her phone with shaking hands. I need to know about my biological father. Does he even know I exist? Mom's face went pale. Jessica, don't. I found him, Jessica said, scrolling through her phone. David Smith, CEO of Tech Forward Solutions in Seattle, married to Linda Smith for 35 years, 2 kids, Michael and Jennifer. Her voice cracked. My half-siblings who I've never met. He knew, Mom admitted quietly. When I told him I was pregnant, he knew the timing meant it was his. But he agreed to stay away if I promised never to contact him. So he just abandoned me? Jessica's voice rose. He knew he had a daughter and just left? Dad spoke gently. He left the business at a significant loss, took his family across the country. In his own way, he was trying to minimize the damage. Jessica had already pulled up an email, typing rapidly. Well, the damage is done now. He should at least know that. What are you writing? Mom asked, panicked. The truth. That I just found out. That I exist. That I'm his daughter whether he wants to acknowledge it or not. She hit send before anyone could stop her. Within minutes, her phone rang. She stared at the Seattle area code, then answered on speaker. Hello? Jessica? A man's voice, deep and uncertain. I'm David Smith. I've been waiting for this call for 32 years. The room went silent. Even Mom stopped crying. You knew about me, Jessica said, not a question. Your mother sent me one photo when you were born. You look just like my mother. I've kept it all these years, hoping someday. He paused. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I wasn't there. 3 days later, I stood in my childhood home watching Mom pack her belongings into boxes. The house felt different already, lighter, like windows had been opened after decades of stifling air. Dad had given her a week, but she was leaving early, unable to bear the weight of his cold silence and my presence. I suppose you're enjoying this, Mom said, not looking at me as she wrapped her china, the good china from the main table. No, I said honestly. I'm not enjoying watching my mother lose everything. I'm just relieved it's over. She turned to me then, looking older than I'd ever seen her. I did love you, Athena. In my broken way, I did. You loved the idea of me. The daughter who would make you look good, validate your marriage. When I couldn't be that, you punished me for existing. I was punishing myself, she admitted. Every time I hurt you, I was hurting the part of me that knew better. But it became an addiction. If I could make Jessica perfect enough, successful enough, maybe it would balance out what I'd done. Except it didn't. It just created 2 damaged daughters instead of none. Jessica appeared in the doorway with more boxes. She'd been helping Mom pack, not out of forgiveness but from a sense of duty. The moving truck is here. Mom looked between us, her 2 daughters, finally equals in their distance from her. Will either of you ever forgive me? Maybe someday, Jessica said, but not today. Not for a long time. I need to learn to forgive myself first, I added, for accepting it for so long, for believing I was worth less. Mom nodded, understanding she'd lost both daughters in different ways. She picked up the last box and walked out of our lives. 2 weeks after Mom moved out, Dad, Jessica, and I sat around the same dining room table where everything had exploded. But this time we all sat together. No children's table, no hierarchy, just three people trying to build something from the wreckage. I've been thinking, Dad said, pouring wine, modest $20 bottles, not Jessica's performative selections. We need family therapy, all three of us. We have 32 years of dysfunction to unpack. Jessica nodded immediately. I've already started individual therapy. My therapist says I have to rebuild my entire sense of self. Everything I thought I was is tangled up in Mom's lies. How's it going with David? I asked. Jessica had been in contact with her biological father since that first call. Complicated. He wants to meet, but his wife is struggling with it. 32 years of marriage and suddenly I exist. His kids, my half-siblings, they're curious but cautious. Take your time, Dad advised. You're still my daughter, Jessica. Biology doesn't erase 32 years of bedtime stories and driving lessons. But I'm not really. You are really, Dad said firmly. I changed your diapers, taught you to ride a bike, walked you down the aisle at your mock wedding when you were 6. You're my daughter. Athena's my daughter. That's not negotiable. I reached across the table and took Jessica's hand. We're sisters. Full stop. We just happen to have different biological fathers, but we share something more important. We survived Margaret Kingston. Jessica laughed through tears. Is it weird that I can't call her Mom anymore? I've been calling her Margaret in my head for years, I admitted. For the first time in 35 years, we felt like a real family. Smaller, wounded, but honest. It was enough. It was everything. 6 months had transformed everything. I sat in my new office. Principal Athena Kingston, the nameplate read. Without the weight of unworthiness Mom had draped over me, I'd finally pursued the promotion I'd never felt deserving of. The school board had been impressed by my vision and experience, wondering why I hadn't applied years earlier. Jessica had taken a sabbatical from law, using the time to rebuild her identity. I need to know who I am when I'm not the golden child, she'd explained. She'd also legally changed her name to Jessica Kingston Smith, honoring both fathers. How was Seattle? I asked. Jessica had just returned from visiting David and his family. Awkward but good. His wife Linda is trying. My half-siblings are warming up. Michael actually looks exactly like me. It's unsettling. She paused. David set up a trust fund for me years ago. He said he always hoped I'd find him someday. That's wonderful. I want to split it with you. Jessica, no. We've been through this. It's not guilt money this time. It's sister money. I want to do this. Dad joined us for our weekly dinner, a new tradition. Any word from Margaret? She sent another letter, I said. I didn't open it. She's living with Aunt Helen, Jessica added, working as a receptionist at a dental office. Helen says she's trying to change, going to therapy. Too little, too late, Dad said, then softened. But I hope she finds peace, for her own sake. We raised our glasses. 3 survivors of a 32-year deception, finally free to be ourselves. The children's table was gone, donated to charity. In its place, just one table where everyone had an equal seat. 1 year later, Thanksgiving arrived with crisp air and the promise of redemption. I stood in the same dining room where I'd been humiliated, but everything had changed. The long table was set for 12, Dad, Jessica, me, Uncle Tom, Aunt Helen, a few cousins, and Jessica's biological father David with his son Michael, who'd flown in from Seattle. Need help? Jessica asked, carrying in the turkey. We'd cooked together this year, sharing Grandma Rose's recipes that I'd hoarded and she'd never learned. Just put it at the center, I said. No head of the table this year. We're doing a circle. Dad walked in with wine. Nothing fancy, just good, honest bottles. The house looks wonderful, Athena. I'd bought the family home from Dad, transforming it from a museum of hierarchy into a warm, welcoming space. The formal dining room now had photos of both daughters equally displayed. My teaching award sat next to Jessica's law degree. No favorites, just family. David Smith stood awkwardly by the window, still adjusting to being in the house where his affair had happened. Thank you for including me, he said quietly. You're Jessica's father, I replied simply. That makes you family, complicated as it is. As everyone found their seats, no assigned places, no children's table, Uncle Tom raised his glass. To second chances in truth, no matter how painful. To sisters who found each other, Jessica added, squeezing my hand. To sitting at the same table, I said, my voice strong. All of us, equally. The ghost of last year's humiliation faded as laughter filled the room. Mom was absent but not missed. Her empty chair had been removed entirely. This was our family now, scarred but healing, smaller but stronger, built on truth instead of lies. After dinner, as everyone relaxed in the living room, Jessica pulled out an envelope. She sent this to both of us, she said quietly. Same letter, 2 copies. I recognized Mom's handwriting immediately. When? This morning. I think she knew we'd be together today. We opened them simultaneously, reading in silence. My dear daughters, I know I have no right to contact you, but therapy has taught me that accountability means acknowledging harm without expecting forgiveness. I destroyed our family with my choices. Athena, I stole your childhood, your self-worth, and your mother's love. Jessica, I used you as a shield for my guilt, making you complicit in hurting your sister. I see now that my favoritism wasn't love, it was manipulation. Every gift I gave Jessica was really for me, to quiet my conscience. Every slight against Athena was punishment for my own betrayal. I turned my daughters into enemies to protect my secret. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for anything. I just needed you both to know that I understand now what I did. The children's table wasn't about your worth, Athena. It was about my fear that if I treated you as you deserved, everyone would see the truth. You were always worthy, both of you. I was the one who wasn't. Margaret. Jessica looked at me. Do we respond? No, I said firmly. She said she's not asking for anything. Let's honor that. Are you angry? I was. Now I'm just free. Her apology doesn't change the past, but at least she finally sees it clearly. We put the letters away. Someday, maybe we'd forgive her. But today was about our new family, our real family, where everyone had an equal seat at the table. Later that evening, after everyone had gone, Jessica and I sat on the porch swing Dad had installed when we were kids. We'd never sat on it together before. It had always been Jessica's spot while I watched from inside. I've been thinking about changing careers, Jessica said suddenly. Law doesn't feel right anymore. It's too tied up in Mom's expectations, her guilt money. What would you do instead? Maybe teaching, like you. She smiled at my surprise. You change lives, Athena. Real change, not just winning settlements. I want to do something that matters. You'd be starting over completely. Good. I need to build something that's actually mine. She pulled out her phone, showing me a photo. Also, I did something, look. It was a legal document. What is this? I put half of David's trust fund in your name. Non-negotiable. It's done. Jessica, no arguments. It's not guilt money or pity money. It's justice money. You're my sister, my real sister, sister's share. We rocked in silence, watching the stars appear. The same stars we'd watched as children from separate windows, never together. You know what the worst part was? I said. I spent so long believing I was defective, that there was something fundamentally wrong with me that made me unlovable. And I spent so long believing I was special, Jessica countered, that I'd earned every advantage. We were both wrong. But now we know the truth. Now we know. She linked her arm through mine. Athena, I love you. I should have said it years ago, but I love you. I love you too, Jess. Despite everything, because of everything, I love you too. For the first time in our lives, we were just sisters. No hierarchy, no golden child, no children's table, just 2 women who'd survived Margaret Kingston and chosen each other. I stood in my office the Monday after Thanksgiving, looking at the photo Jessica had insisted we take. The two of us at the dining table, sitting side by side, raising glasses to the camera. Equal, valued, sisters. 35 years I'd spent at the metaphorical children's table of my own life, accepting crumbs while watching others feast on what should have been shared. I'd internalized Mom's treatment, believing I deserved less because I was worth less. The DNA test hadn't just revealed Jessica's parentage, it had revealed the lie I'd been living. My assistant knocked. "Ms. Kingston? There's a parent here about their daughter being bullied. They specifically asked for you." As I prepared to help another child find their worth, I thought about the journey from that humiliating Thanksgiving to now. The children's table was gone, but its lesson remained. Never let anyone assign your worth based on their own guilt, fear, or convenience. Jessica texted me, "Submitted my teaching application today, following in my big sister's footsteps." I smiled, texting back, "You're going to be amazing." The DNA test had exposed more than Mom's affair. It had exposed the truth that I'd always been enough. The problem was never my worth. It was her inability to face what she'd done. Every slight, every humiliation, every moment at the children's table had been about her shame, not my value. I kept one thing from that horrible Thanksgiving, the place card with my name scrawled carelessly on an index card, not as a reminder of humiliation, but of survival. I'd sat at that table, endured that shame, and still rose to claim my seat at life's main table, because I'd always deserved to be there. We all do. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, remember, your worth isn't determined by how others treat you. Do you have a DNA test story that changed everything? Share it in the comments below. Like if you believe in family truth over comfortable lies, and subscribe for more stories about finding your worth. And remember, you deserve a seat at every table.